This short course is focused on NUPP, which stands for Nearly Universal Principles of Projects. So principles that we can apply to project management. So let's start off with a quick introduction. First of all, what is a principle? Well, we have principles for everything, but a principle is a fundamental truth or behavior to live by. So we have principles for life, but we also have principles for projects. And these NUPP principles, well, they can be used for all project management frameworks, no matter what you use. And you can also use them in all normal business practices as well. You can see that when we list them. Okay, so let's proceed here. There are 6 nearly universal principles, or NUPS, let's say. And the first one is prefer results and truth to affiliations. So what does that mean? Well, it means be open for ideas, and I will explain that further in detail, but that's a nice summary. Next one is preserve and optimize energy and resources. What does that mean? Well, work smart, try to work 8 hours a day, not too much more, and then you'll have energy for the next day. Third one is always be proactive. It's a bit easier to understand, so give yourself time to think ahead of what might come around the corner, so therefore you're better prepared. Next one, remember, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So what we're trying to get across here is think about the project as a whole and don't focus on one cool part, because everything has to work together in order for what you're trying to do to work in totally. Number 5, don't do anything without a clear purpose. So always ask, what's the purpose? Just keep reminding yourself to do that. Use repeatable elements. What does that mean? Well, it kind of says that if you do something, perhaps make a checklist out of it so you can repeat this again, and it'll lower the amount of thinking that you have to do. Okay, but I give more examples on this as we go on. So now let's look at the first one here. So first of all, just as a quick reminder, there are 4 questions in the exam for NUPP, so it's a good idea to be very aware of this and to be able to pick up 4 extra questions. Okay, so the first one is prefer results to affiliations. Now you could have used the word affiliation, like I'm affiliated with that group. That's what it means. So are we affiliated to a group or a system or a process? Humans like to belong to a group. That's just a tendency that we actually have. For example, you may have heard of waterfall, which is an old version of project management, or the traditional version of project management, versus agile. So maybe younger people say, oh, it only should be agile, everything should be agile, while more older people would say waterfall. In actual fact, it's both. You should take ideas from both in order to do good project management. The biggest 2 certifications are Prince 2 and PMBOK. So one person will say, hey, I only do what's in the PMBOK, while the other person will say, no, I stick with the Prince 2. And in fact, you should take bits from both. So be open to new ideas. So the trick here is be open to learn new things, don't be tribal, and stay curious. Stay interested in what's happening around you and be open to actually learn. And always think about be result orientated, so always think what is best for the project, and if something is better for the project, then give up that idea and take on a new idea. That's a general idea here. So prefer results and the truths to affiliations. So let's look at some scenarios here. So you might get a question like, should the PM project manager be open for new ideas during the project? Yes, of course, always. Okay, they don't have to waste lots of time, but they quickly should get an overview or spend some time getting an overview to see that does that help their project in the long run, and if it does, ask people to explain it to them and find out why. How to react when a person suggests a new approach. So you're used to doing something, and this person comes in. And the first thing you should do is say, hey, sit down and convince me. So give them time to be able to do that. And allow them to convince you. Maybe they can't, but then you can tell them that. But they have an opportunity. Maybe you will learn something. But if they can convince you, then you've learned a whole new way of doing something which is better. So who wins? Well, the project is going to win. And if they come across a new idea, then they're going to give it to you again because you've listened before. So that's good. Okay, so the second principle is preserve and optimize energy and resources. All right, so We know that energy is not unlimited for the project manager and for team members, so we should be careful about using lots of their time. So don't work 10 to 14 hours a day for you. Have a good work-life balance. The team members will see this and they will also try to copy it. Okay, that's important. Also avoid micromanagement of people. So what that means is don't break down deliverables or products into lots of different tasks and then manage those tasks and follow up on them. That just creates a lot of effort work for you, and you kind of take away the trust between you and the team. So give the team a specification, allow them to define their own tasks, and then just verify that it was done correctly by doing a quality test. That puts the load on you a lot easier, and it allows them to contribute a lot more as well. Okay. There's also, you might have heard the Pareto rule, 80-20. This comes across in everything actually. And sometimes 20% of the effort might reach 80% of the benefits. So how does that apply to projects? Well, 20% of the work which you do in a project might link to 80% of the benefits of what the people who are going to use whatever you're going to get or the project will deliver. So just focus on that part first, and maybe you don't need to do all the other features which don't really add a lot of value. Okay, so try to find out what the most important things are to do. Give yourself time to think as well in a project. So often the project manager is running around, they're doing lots of administration, but give yourself buffer time, plan it in your project. It's important. And last of all, show appreciation to team members. Yeah, really. It's great because it motivates them. They get more out of the project. They feel happier and they feel better that they can contribute more and they can learn more because they're improving all of the time. So that's really important for team members. Right, some scenarios, some questions you might get. So should the project manager ask the team to work 1 week late to catch up? So if there's a big problem, should they ask them to work a little bit later? The answer is no, because if you do that, then the expectation is, we always have that buffer, we can always get them to work late. And that's not good. Team members have lives, they have social lives, they have families, they have commitments and sporting events. So they have a life outside work. So allow them to do their work when they're at work and very well. But when the day is finished, they should be allowed to go home. It's respect for those people as well. Should the project manager break down deliverables into tasks and manage them? No, this is micromanagement. You don't need to do that. I know that when you open up a software, any software for project management, it tells you to define tasks, but that's not what we do. Team managers can do that with the help from the team members, but as a project manager, you don't do that. You write specifications, and then people decide the activities and tasks they do on their own. Should the project manager plan buffer time in their agenda to think? Yes, always have buffer time. There's a great expression that you've got to appear a little bit lazy. So just give yourself time to think and to be efficient in the way that you are working, or to be effective, I should say, in the way that you are working. But you can only do that if you give yourself time to think and not always chasing the latest thing that's coming up. Should the project manager send emails of appreciation to team members? Definitely. This is really a great motivator. You get extra buy-in, you make people feel much better about their work, and they will grow much better within their project, which is part of your responsibility as well, is to look after your team members. Okay, so that's the second one. Preserve and optimize energy and resources. Next one, always be proactive. This is a bit easier to understand, but again, give yourself time to be proactive and not reactive. Okay, I'll explain that in a moment when it comes up. So continuous planning is being proactive. Always be thinking ahead, So, of course, the plan will change as soon as it goes into effect, but always thinking about, okay, what's around the corner, and should we adjust something here? What new stuff might come in? Give yourself time to do it. Risk management is a great form of being proactive because you're trying to think what might happen in the future, and if something does come up, how we can be prepared for it. So you're anticipating the future all of the time. That's really super. Also be open for stakeholder and continuous feedback and communicate effectively. So reach out to the different stakeholders in the project, ask them for feedback, because the sooner you find out about something, then you can be proactive. If you try to avoid contacting stakeholders because you're shy, then you're going to hear about things very late. But by being proactive in this, you can be much more aware of things for the project. Now, this is a bit funny here. Proactive in shutting down the project. What does that mean? Well, let's say we're halfway through the project and we've created all of the most important deliverables. So we get like a 10-to-1 return on investment for every deliverable that we are doing. But now we're coming down in the priority. So we find ourselves, we are now working on deliverables that only give a return on investment of maybe 3-to-1 or 2-to-1. Then we should start thinking about shutting down the project. So be proactive because you save money for the organization, and you can also then restart a new project where you're adding a better value in high priority deliverables. And the last one is take responsibility for your team. So if somebody complains about something, you are responsible. Take the hit, you as project manager, and protect the team, and you will get much appreciation from your team members as well. We do never ask the question, who's to blame? Great. So some scenarios. Should the project manager give themselves an hour a week to think about planning? The answer would be no. If it was an hour a day, that would be better, but an hour a week is not sufficient enough. That's no way they should do that. Okay. Should the project manager do all their planning and project initiation? No. Planning is something that's continuous. It's something that has to be done all of the time during the project. So maybe we can plan certain things up front, but we're always thinking about planning during the project and where we are and what might come up. Which is being more proactive, risk management or issue management? Well, risk management is about thinking about the future, what might happen. Issue management is more reacting to something that did happen. So risk management is very proactive, while issue management is not proactive at all because the issue has happened and now you have to deal with it. It's very reactive. Does evaluating stakeholder satisfaction help with being proactive? God, it does. Definitely, because you hear about things much quicker if you do this. People are more open to giving you feedback, and then you can take better action to make sure the project will have a successful end. And the last one, should the project manager ever actively look to shut down the project? Yes, of course, because the organization is spending money on projects and there's no point in it spending money on deliverables which have a low return on investment. So as soon as you think the project is done and we have got the vast majority, like 80% of the benefits, we should start thinking about shutting down the project so we can focus on a new project where we're delivering very high value from like the first month. Okay, so that was that for always be proactive. Our next NUPP principle is remember that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So we're used to this saying, but let's see what it means from a project management point of view. Well, the idea here is that we focus on the project as a whole, and not just on certain aspects that excite us, okay, because that would be incorrect. Appreciate project members because then we get extra buy-in, we get extra support from them as well. All domains of the project need attention. Now, what can happen if a project manager comes from a specific technical area? They may still get very excited about dealing with some problems there and helping out. But that's actually not a good idea. The project manager must come back a little bit in his chair, lean back, and take a full overview of the project. What we call this is a helicopter view of the project. So maintain a full overview on the project, detect things that need attention, and then go in and actually fix them. That's what we should be trying to do. Now, some scenario questions here. Is it okay for the project manager to focus on the most important features of the project? Well, maybe a little bit. Okay, of course, we want to make sure those get done. Maybe the high-risk areas, maybe get a bit more attention, but they must maintain that overall view on the project. Because what will happen, they will leave something out that was very simple, and then the project is in trouble, and that's not very good. The sponsor of the project told the project manager to put team members first and the deliverable second. Is this a good or bad idea? Well, actually, in the business world, there's been a whole emphasis on putting employees first and putting customers second. Because if you have happy employees, then you're going to have happy customers. And that's the same thing as being done here. Put your team members first, and then you'll have higher quality, better deliverables. So it is good advice to do that. And thirdly, should the project manager have a helicopter view or task overview of the project? Okay, so should they know whatever all the tasks which people are working on? No way. Okay, they should remain high level and have a helicopter view. If you're a team manager or working on a small project, then you can have an overview of the tasks. But as a project manager, we should be staying very, very high level. Right. So that's that one. Right. The next one is don't do anything without a clear purpose. Okay, there should be a clear purpose on something before you move off your chair. So keep asking, what is the purpose of something? Okay, so whether it's a project, a deliverable, or a report or procedure, always ask, what's the purpose of this? Because by answering that question, it gives you a better overview on what you need to actually do, which is a great idea. The purpose as well, it defines the box to work within. So it gives you kind of a North Star, a focus for you and the team, what to focus on. So the purpose is really great. And that's why whenever I define a deliverable, I always say, okay, what's the purpose? And start the sentence. The purpose of this deliverable is to, then you finish it, and then it aligns everybody in the one direction. That's where the North Star comes from. There is a good elevator story that's often told. Let's say there was an elevator company about 20 years ago, and people were often complaining that the elevators were going very slow. So they tried to come up with a solution for this. And of course, there's a speed limit on elevators. But what was really the purpose behind it? Well, the purpose behind it was that people had nothing to do in the elevator, so time went very, very slowly. And this was before mobile phones. Okay, so what they did was, well, how can we give people something to do in the elevator? And so to pass the time quicker. So what they did was, instead of trying to make the elevators to go much faster, which would cost a fortune and maybe not be allowed to actually install in the building because it would be more dangerous, they just installed mirrors into each elevator. Mirrors are very cheap, and then people can check how they look and maybe check a spot on their face. But then all of a sudden, when the mirrors were installed, the elevators appeared to go a hell of a lot faster. And that's great. So always focus on the purpose. So some scenario questions. Should the project manager define the purpose of each deliverable, or is this too low level? Nope, they should do it. They should definitely do it. It's not too low level. They should definitely do it because it aligns everybody who is going to give feedback about the specifications for that deliverable. Should the project manager encourage the team to think outside the box? Thinking outside the box is the very opposite to defining the purpose of something and then thinking inside the box, coming up with specifications which fit that purpose. Thinking outside the box has no value whatsoever. It's a famous expression, but in project management, it's got no added value at all. Next question. Should the project manager question existing processes in an organization? And sure, they should, because that means they will get a better insight and be better able to react to that process and define better what's actually needed, and maybe even make a suggestion as well. So that's a very good idea. Okay, so that's it for NUPP 5. Then NUPP 6, use repeatable elements. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if a person has an ad hoc approach to project management, that means that they're coming into a project and they're asking, okay, what should we do next, and try to figure it out. That's not a good idea. It's good to have a certain process to follow. And this process then is like a checklist. So there's certain things you do one after the other, and that gives you an order. So you have to use less brain power. It's very easy, and the expectations on how projects work then are easier for people around you as well. So that's important. Checklists, or having a checklist, this is knowledge. So when you create a checklist, it's based probably most likely on experience of things to actually do. And this checklist is really good example of knowledge and a form of planning as well. Okay. Also, the idea of using a knowledge database and document templates are very handy. So, for example, example, after the end of a project, we put all our lessons into a knowledge database. Or if we have to deal with a supplier, well, how should we deal with that supplier so we don't have to reinvent the process every time that we come across them. So a knowledge base is a very, very good idea of using repeatable elements. And of course, document templates can get people started. A document may have to have particular headings, and then we make suggestions of text that have to go in that field, so when people read it, they'll be able to understand it much better. So all of that is a great idea. And also, when projects work in similar environments, we can actually tailor then the project to suit a particular environment. So if you're doing rollout of an application into lots of different companies, it's the same type of application which we're rolling out. So therefore, the projects are going to be very similar, and we should tailor our approach for that kind of projects. And then if we have different kinds of projects, then we have a slightly different way of working for those projects as well. So that's a good idea. And keep the project management process as minimalistic as possible. So it makes it very easy for new people coming into the project to understand what's going on and to follow. There's no point in overcomplicating stuff. Okay, so now some questions. So the project manager claims that using a checklist saves time. Is that correct? Yes, it saves a lot of time because it brings knowledge into the project, and you can check if you're missing something as well, okay, which is important. How do repeatable monthly elements help? Well, there's expectations then in the project team that this thing is going to happen every month. Like every month, the people from the customer department in your company will come in, they will overlook the requirements, they will give it to you this, and then at the end of the month, they see what you've done and they can give their feedback again. And that's great. So it builds expectations, Every month we get lessons and so on. So it helps the project a lot. At the end of the project manager wishes to archive the project to a central knowledge database. Is this a good idea? Sure, yeah, because if some project like this is ever done again, then other people can actually take advantage of this knowledge, okay? And they can repeat some of the stuff which you have done. So that's a great idea. Right. So that was it. That's the 6 NUPS, or the 6 principles for project management. So they are, again, prefer results and truths to affiliations. So be open for new ideas. Okay, don't be tribal. Preserve and optimize energy and resources. Work smart and try to limit yourself to 8 hours a day. And then when you come in the next morning, you're fresh to work in the next 8 hours. Always be proactive. So always give yourself time to think ahead. Next one, remember a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So have that helicopter view. Think about the project as a whole and not just on parts you get excited about. Don't do anything without a clear purpose. Always ask, what is the purpose of this? And it will give you better insight on what you need to actually do. And use repeatable elements. Use checklists and processes to make it easier for you to manage the project. Great. That's it. I hope you've enjoyed this, and now you'll do great within the questions, those 4 questions which come up on the exam. All right. Good luck.